in the Corvette. We're heading up to the real shop now. Out of the quarantine garage, back up to the real garage so we can get something done finally. Finish up this nice exhaust system with stainless steel. It is for a small block, and this is the LS swap, so we're going to have to cut the pipes and move them. So that's where we're heading now, so we can get to the TIG welder, get everything done. Here we are at the wheel shop. There's one of the manifolds we just took off. Down here is our new flange. We got those bolted on in place so we can start cutting the pipes and lining them up. Side pipes are fitted on the side of the car. So now we're going to cut the pipes, line up the collector, and then line up all the primary tubes on the engine side. Then I'm going to fiddle around with the cooling system to see what I got to do to get this to want to bleed air out properly, because it keeps wanting to get air in the engine and not cooling properly, so got to work on that. Otherwise, I mean, it runs and drives. And here are the side pipe headers that we just got in that we're going to start cutting up. These are going to be a lot of work going from the small block flange to the LS style. We'll get it. I'm excited to get this done. It's going to sound so good. At the end of the video, once we're done with all the fabrication and welding and get it all together, I'll have some good clips of this thing running and moving around a little bit. So stay tuned until the end and you'll really hear this thing roar. All of our initial cuts that we made on these headers during the process, we made sure and cut them on the original welds, just so it leaves it looking a little better and there's just less junctions and welds and dealing with all that. So we cut most of them originally on the welds first, and then we moved them around. Now this is the driver's side header. We decided to do this one first. We actually cut 3 out of the 4 pipes off. We left one, the rear one, as a locator, because if the spacing, the way it works out on an LS to a small block, one of the pipes is in the same location as the small block Chevy. So that's the one we went off of. And it is hard to tell on a video, but I'll tell you, when you're cutting the stainless tubes, it takes a lot longer than it does to cut normal steel headers. The stainless is a lot harder. After our initial cut of the pipes and left the rear one, this is like one of 100 times you got to test fit it, but that's what you have to do to make them fit right. Another thing to note is that the small block Chevy and the LS have different angles for the exhaust outlets on the cylinder head. So you have a different depth of what you need to pipe. So now we're just trimming down the end of the pipe we left to get the right angle. Now the rear pipe is close, and now it's time to test fit it with the side pipe on. That pipe is good. Now it's time to start laying out a couple of the others and just trying to get an idea of where we have to trim them up high for the depth, like I said, with the cylinder head depth, and then we also have to get them made up with the ones on the bottom on the pipes. Another thing that you can notice on the pipe we're working on now is that the ends of all the pipes for the small block are square and the LS has round ends, so we had to shape them. There's a lot more clearance around the steering box than it looks like too, which is great. It's just a lot of test fitting and moving around. Alright, well now you can see we got the chop saw out, and we're doing the depth again for the flange depth, how far the pipe goes in, so we can get that a little closer and keep it away from that steering box. Well, now that we got the flange side of the pipes pretty much laid out, at least for our depth and the angles, now it's time to start clocking the bottom tubes so they're going to line up again. So we're going to have to make some more cuts farther down to make it so we can join up the top part of the pipe to the bottom. We got some more sparks flying. Get the chop saw going again. Now that we gotta trim that, we gotta start figuring out all our lengths we need for the new pipe. Well, now that we got an idea where things are gonna start going, time to start tack welding. So we get the big TIG welder out, and we can start putting some tacks in and get these pipes melted in. Alright, well the first pipe we're going to tack weld is going to be the rear one, because we never ended up cutting it off. We left it there for our locator. So all we did was trim the end of it up so we can get it to line up better with the flange for the angle we needed. So once we get this burned in, it will hold the whole header from moving too much, especially with it mounted to the side pipe already. Then we can build off the flange and not worry about a misalignment. Now we lined up number 1 cylinder on the flange, so now we're moved down to the lower section where we trimmed it, and we're tack welding it. We had tape wrapped around it, so we peeled some of the tape back just so we can get in there and put a nice tack weld, and the tape does hold it in place. And as you can see, there's a lot of smoke from it, and you'll see a little bit of fire. It's just the tape burning, not a big deal. Now that we got number 1 and number 7 tacked in the car, we lined up number 3, got it close with tape, pulled it out. Now we can tack weld it outside the car so you can actually get in there and do it. Then we'll, once the tacks are in, we'll pull the tape off, clean it up, and weld the whole thing. Well, here now we're going to give you a quick idea of what it's like doing just one of these joints. It's quite a process. I even sped up the footage and it's still fairly long. But just you got to make sure you fill in these gaps, because if you have any leaks, it's going to be manifold or header leak, you know, that ticking sound. So that's not really a good sound anybody wants on a nice set of headers like this. So you got to take your time and you got to weld it all the way around. Nice thing with this material is that the tubes are really thick, and you could melt a lot of it in with just a little bit of filler rod and push it around, and it really wasn't bad. You didn't have to use a lot of rod, which was nice. And it still didn't even have much of an undercut to it, which is good. It just looked nice and smooth and small. So just going to take your time and weld all the way around and get it. I'm not going to show you every single weld on every single pipe because we'll be here for hours, but just to give you an idea of what it's like, this is one. Alright, well now we're on the top of number 1 cylinder and we're welding in the flange side of the pipe. Get that nice and tack welded at least, so that way when we pull it off nothing moves and we can weld it on the bench. This is where having a TIG welder is really a crucial tool when you're doing this kind of work, because you're not having sparks flying all over the place like you would with a spool gun or a MIG welder. Alright, well, we pulled it out again now that we got number 1 and number 7 all squared away. So now it's time to weld in the flange for number 7 and number 1. And we can also get the other welds for number 1 all done. Well, we got number 1 and 7 all burned in and they're good to go. So that's back in the car. And then we were test fitting and cutting and making this little pipe here. I think there's like 3 or 4 pieces here. And we had to get just the right angle. So now we're burning this one in all the way. Alright, we got tube number 1, 3, and 7 straightened out. So now we're on to number 5. We tested it in the car and then we pulled it out so we can get the big bends all welded up. So the last pipe we built on this side was number 5 cylinder. And you can see he's just lining it up. Then we got to trim the end, get it just right so we can try to mirror all the depths for all the other pipes, or at least the best you can. Make it look as uniform as possible so it'll be nice looking under the hood. Well, we welded those 2 pipes together now because we liked the way they were. Trim the end a little bit more to make it sit a little bit flatter with all the other pipes, so they're all kind of going the same way, except for the last one obviously, but it's just the way they're made. Now it's time to tack this one. Well, we tacked the top of the pipe in now, so now it's time to weld it solid. So we're down bottom and we got another piece of tube there with a slight bend in it that we cut out and used for this spot, and working good. So now we're going to weld it all in. Great, all done welding. So driver's side header is in for the last time. It is good. Well, we got to take it out probably to clean it, get all the fingerprints off and everything so we don't burn into the stainless. It looks a lot closer than it really is. It's just a shadow. There's plenty of clearance on the frame, the steering box, the firewall, and the side here for us to slide in the side skirts. So it's good to go. All right, well, now we're on to the passenger side. As you can see, we jumped ahead a little bit. We already had to trim all 4 of them off. We tried to leave the first cylinder, number 2, on, but it just did not fit well. So we used that kind of to give us a depth of where the header should be. So then we marked it and then cut it off. So now we can start fabricating again. So now we're going to do all 4 on this size 3. Now you can see we laid out the first and last cylinder on this side too, like we did on the other side, and put a couple tack welds in to hold them. I really wish I could show you guys more of what's going on with this, but it's really difficult to get in there. This is kind of the view that you get throughout most of it, because it's just a little bit tight quarters to really get in there with a camera. It's hard enough to see what you're doing. One guy has to be on the top holding it and lining it up, and then the bottom person has to make sure it tries to start lining up with the bottom pipe. Like, I can't see the bottom guy can't see the top, you know? So it's really difficult to film it for you guys to be able to see it too. So I didn't put a ton of it in there because it's just kind of monotonous. This stage in the game, we started running low on bends that we needed to get all the weird curves to wrap around from the pipes that we cut off. So luckily we had some 1 7/8 stainless kicking around, so we were able to use that to make it work. Alright, well, we got another one test fitted, so now it's time to weld it on the bench and get it lined up underneath the car. So we got to run a full bead all the way around. Pull the tape off already, because it was a good locator. Using masking tape is great in the car, because you can really get it exactly lined up and take it out. The funny thing with this car is that the passenger side was actually more difficult to do than the driver's side, which I thought was really strange, because usually the steering box and all that's in the way. But no, for some reason that passenger side gave us a lot of trouble. You can see how many tiny little cuts we had to make just to get these pipes to snake around each other. I mean, it was quite a bit of time. But now we got everything taped up outside the car where we want to keep it. So now it's time to start welding all these pipes in place. Now it's time to fully weld it. We got everything test fitted and set up and tack welded. Got it test fitted again. I mean, we probably had it in and out of the car, I don't know, 20 times, I think, probably. But that's what it takes to get them to line up right and not have any clearance issues or flow problems or gaps or whatever. So as you can see, we got basically a fixture we made out of a really thick straight edge. And we clamped it right to the flange there real tight. So that way the flange won't warp when we put a lot of heat to it. This is the best way that we like to do it. You could weld it to the bench and everything else, but we like to do it this way. Those flanges are super thick, so once you clamp them down like this, they usually don't warp too much. So yeah, time to start welding. Another thing that's kind of hard to show you guys on an edited video like this is that you gotta keep moving these things around so much, because doing these big side pipe headers, they're so big that there's a lot of surface area to weld. And there's a lot of tight angles and stuff you got to get to, so it makes it a lot more difficult to weld these up. So you can see, got to keep flipping it. All right, well, after just countless, I'd say hours of welding, we're finally done. This is just him wrapping it up. Then we'll pop him back in the car. And if you're still watching at this point in the video, what you've been waiting for is to hear what this thing's going to sound like with the side pipes. So finally, it's time to get it fired up. Listen to it and hear this thing really sounds sweet. Also, we took a card by Bird and cleaned up the inside of the flanges where we welded, so it has a nice transition. it up and heading back to the quarantine garage so I can go over it and finish up all the little stuff. Alright guys, well thanks a lot for watching. There was a lot of work building those headers, but it'll pay off in the end. I mean, they came out beautiful, they flow great, and they're a one-off piece now. And this car is really getting close to being done, so stay tuned guys for our next video. I am waiting on the custom muffler inserts to come in. They were custom made, so it takes a little bit of time. So just please guys, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. We'll get more stuff out as soon as we can. And check us out on Instagram, we're Mass Mechanics.